The American dream and a marriage filled with hope. Maria Hernandez stood on the edge of her new life, the Los Angeles skyline shimmering in the distance beneath a golden Californian sunset. Having grown up in a small town in Mexico, she had always dreamed of the vastness and vibrancy of America, a place where perseverance and ambition could transform destinies. Maria's journey had not been easy. She worked her way through community college while juggling late shifts in bustling diners, learning to navigate English and the layered complexities of American culture. And yet, she never let go of the hope that she could build something better, something lasting in this promised land. It was during her second year at college that she met David Wallace. David was everything Maria was not, the only son of an established family. His confidence shaped by generations of privilege and polished by prestigious schools. But there was an undeniable spark between them. They met in a shared literature class. She noticed his thoughtful questions. He was drawn to her quiet strength and determination. Coffee dates turned into late-night conversations.
It really is.
Before long, their worlds, though so different, began to entwine. Maria's family, although far away, celebrated her happiness from a distance, sending blessings and advice across the border. David's world was very different.
This proposal
Upscale
frankly
galas,
lacks the
summer
strategic
homes
foresight
along the
required
Pacific
for our
coast,
market position.
family gatherings in sprawling mansions.
It's a setup.
The promise of this life was intoxicating, but at the heart of everything for Maria was David's love and the sense of belonging.
You belong
it
to me
promised.
now.
Together, they envisioned a future brimming with hope, a modest home of their own, careers they could build side by side,
David, you have to look at this.
Someday, children who would embody the best of both their worlds. When David asked Maria to marry him, it was beneath the dizzying lights of Griffith Observatory. The city spread out below them. Maria said yes, feeling as if she were finally stepping into the dream she had so long carried in her heart.
I really need your help with
The
this.
engagement marked the beginning of a new chapter.
Just tell me everything you know.
Not just as an individual forging her way in a new country.
I think I saw something.
But as part of a partnership.
I need you to confirm it.
Built on shared dreams and mutual respect. Despite the undercurrents of difference in background and culture, Maria's optimism remained unshakable.
This is the
She
last
believed
time.
deeply
Do you hear me?
that
The
love could
last
bridge divides.
time.
That together, she and David could rise above challenges.
You won't find what you're looking for there.
Writing a new story that honored both their histories. For Maria, marriage was far more than a social contract. It was the living, breathing symbol of her journey toward the American dream.
Oh!
A commitment to a future full of hope, possibilities, and the quiet courage of forging a life together
You always do this.
in the land of opportunity. The powerful mother-in-law,
Please, David.
Rebecca Wallace, was a woman whose presence commanded every room she entered. Born and raised in a family with deep roots in California's upper class, she was the epitome of old money and social prestige. Her silver gray hair was always perfectly coiffed.
Don't follow
Her
me!
jewelry tasteful, yet
going?
unmistakably
Just
expensive.
leave me alone!
And every gesture, however small, spoke of
We are in
cultivated
active
elegance
pursuit.
and
I
authority.
need backup at the main
Having
intersection
taken the
now.
reins of her husband's real estate empire, after his early passing, Rebecca had long been the true head of the Wallace family. In her private life, as in business, her word was law. As the only child, David had always been the focus of Rebecca's formidable affection and ambition. She orchestrated every aspect of his upbringing, enrolling him in elite preparatory schools,
See that small
arranging
chip right there
exclusive summer
at the base of the column
internships,
up
Yes, I
and
see it now.
carefully managing the family's social calendar to align David with the right circles. Rebecca prided herself on knowing every detail of her son's life, and until Maria's arrival,
David.
she had
We can get
succeeded
through this.
in keeping
How,
his
Maria?
world perfectly ordered.
How do we come back from
The
something
news
like
of David's
this?
engagement to
Leah.
Maria came as a personal affront. In Rebecca's mind, the Wallace legacy depended on maintaining a certain status, a standard Maria simply did not meet. Maria's Latin American heritage, working-class background, and the slight accent that tinged her otherwise fluent English were glaring breaches in Rebecca's carefully constructed world. To the matriarch, Maria was not just an outsider. She was a potential threat to everything the family name stood for. Rebecca's disapproval was never openly stated. Instead, it was woven into subtle comments at Sunday brunches, innocuous-seeming questions about Maria's family, or pointed reminders of social traditions that Maria could not possibly know. In public, Rebecca smiled politely, but behind closed doors, she voiced her displeasure to close friends and confidants, seeding doubt and suspicion at every turn. She used influence within local philanthropic circles to quietly diminish Maria's reputation and set a tone of distant civility
Answer me now.
during family gatherings. But perhaps the most powerful dimension of Rebecca's character was her ability to manipulate without ever seeming overtly cruel. She orchestrated situations to make Maria feel unwelcome, planning events where Spanish was never spoken, inviting ex-girlfriends of David to lavish parties,
David!
and insisting on upholding Wallace customs that left Maria lost and embarrassed. She kept a watchful eye over her son, sometimes calling late at night to voice concern over Maria's adjustment or to drop hints about rumors she'd heard. This was not malice for its own sake. Rebecca truly believed she was protecting her son, her lineage, and the family's reputation. Still, beneath the cold decorum was a determination that could not be underestimated. Rebecca stopped at nothing to retain her control over the Wallace household, seeing the battle with Maria as a test of her authority. Each interaction was a delicate game of chess, concealed behind the polished facade of an American socialite. But for Maria, every glance and every word came weighted with unspoken judgment, making the sprawling Wallace estate
that looks great
feel at times more like a fortress than a home. The sinister schemes within the luxurious mansion. From the outside, the Wallace mansion seemed to embody the American dream itself. Sprawling gardens, marble columns, and pristine glass windows that looked out across the rolling hills of Southern California. But beneath the surface, shadows loomed. For Maria, the magnificent architecture and rich furnishings only heightened her sense of alienation. Each gilded room became a stage for a chess game in which she was the unwitting pawn, and Rebecca Wallace was the master strategist. It began with small things.
This is
Maria
where we
would
break the
find
chain.
herself
You need
excluded
to
from
understand
conversations at dinner,
every
as relatives
link.
exchanged knowing looks and inside jokes she did not understand.
My
Rebecca
love.
would smile sweetly, offering compliments laced with subtle barbs. "Your English is coming along so nicely," she would say. Or, "I suppose your family must be proud you married into this world." Maria would force a
Please come
smile,
in, make yourselves at
her
home.
cheeks burning with humiliation. Rebecca's
Justice means
tactics
everyone is
escalated
treated
with a
fairly.
calculated
And
precision
integrity
that
means
left
doing
no
the right
trace
thing,
of overt
even when
malice.
no one is watching.
She planned social gatherings designed to reinforce Maria's outsider status. Intimate teas, where every guest was an old friend, or charity galas, where Maria, in a simple dress, would feel dwarfed amid designer gowns and glistening jewels. She would drop hints about what was proper, question Maria's choice of food, or helpfully point out etiquette rules that Maria had unknowingly breached. Even holidays were weaponized. Christmases in the mansion were lavish affairs steeped in tradition. And every time Maria got something wrong, Rebecca would sigh and say,
I expect it to be handled
"Perhaps
discreetly.
next year,
It
dear."
will be.
As months passed, Maria's confidence began to erode.
We need to
She
ensure
confided
that
in
the
David,
system
but he
works for
dismissed her
everyone,
concerns
not
as
just those with
misunderstandings.
power.
"My mother just has high standards," he would say, not realizing the depth of Rebecca's manipulation. Maria felt increasingly isolated, unsure whom she could trust. Her phone conversations with her own family grew fewer and more strained. She didn't want to worry them, nor did she want to admit defeat. The silence in her luxurious bedroom became a nightly torment. Behind her careful composure, however, Maria was observant. She noticed the way Rebecca always seemed to know what Maria planned, how she would preempt her, making Maria appear forgetful or careless in front of others. There were odd phone calls Maria overheard late at night, and cryptic meetings Rebecca would have with strangers in expensive suits. Maria grew convinced there was more at play than mere disapproval. The hostility felt orchestrated. Things became more sinister. One morning, Maria awoke to find a tabloid newspaper on the breakfast table, open to a story about a scandal involving a woman with a background similar to hers. Some people never
Then all
outrun
the
their
animals
past,
fell fast asleep,
Rebecca mused,
dreaming of
not
tomorrow's
looking up
adventures.
from her coffee. Later, Maria received anonymous letters in the mail, written in neat block print, warning her that not everyone in the neighborhood was as welcoming as they seemed. David dismissed the notes as childish pranks, but Maria saw Rebecca's fingerprints everywhere.
Grandfather
Rebecca's campaign
always said
extended
that
into the community.
integrity
She
in
spoke in
architecture
hushed
is
tones
not just about
to neighbors
buildings.
at country club functions,
Just as we
weaving tales
discussed.
of Maria's supposed improprieties, hinting at a broken family, possible legal troubles from her immigration past, and motives that had nothing to do with love. She would compliment Maria lavishly in public, then quietly undermine her reputation with a single offhand comment as soon as backs were turned.
It
The
was a
effect
designed
was
failure.
insidious.
A
Whispers
flaw intentionally
followed Maria
introduced.
wherever she went, and old friends of David's now offered
saw him there,
only
didn't you?
lukewarm smiles.
I already told
and
you I
clipped
don't know
pleasantries.
anything.
Feeling increasingly hunted, Maria began to question her own sanity. Sometimes it seemed
didn't
as
mean
if the
for any of
entire
this to
house
happen.
itself turned against her. Family heirlooms disappeared from their usual places, only to reappear just as Rebecca accused Maria of carelessness. Party invitations
Make sure
for Maria
everything
would
on this
vanish,
desk is gone by
or
morning.
she would learn of important appointments only after they had passed. Servants in the household, loyal to Mrs. Wallace, politely ignored her requests or informed Rebecca of everything
Yes.
Maria did.
That's it. We got
It was psychological warfare, invisible to outsiders
Recovery complete.
and all-consuming for the one trapped within. Rebecca's influence extended far beyond social circles. She hired a private investigator under the guise of protecting the family name, instructing him to dig into every detail of Maria's past. The detective, slick and discreet, showed up at Maria's old neighborhood, asked questions of former bosses,
Conspiracy involved a
neighbors,
network of
and even
high-ranking officials and
classmates.
corporate
Word
executives,
soon
all
reached
working
Maria's
to
family
manipulate
back
market
home in
prices for
Mexico
personal gain.
that someone
All right,
was
team,
inquiring
let's
about
refine
her,
this detail.
unnerving them,
I think we
and
can
fueling
optimize
their
the
own
flow here.
doubts about her
Yes,
new
a
life
more
in
organic
America.
approach.
Secretly, Rebecca began to probe David as well. She confided in him about her supposed concerns for the marriage, hinting
Sí, yo
at
te
background
entiendo.
checks, worrying reports, and veiled threats that Maria might not be who she claimed. "I only want what's best for you, darling," Rebecca would say, squeezing David's hand as she planted seeds of mistrust with masterful subtlety. At first, David resisted, but doubt slowly crept in.
We're
Maria
driven by
sensed the
purpose
shift,
over
not in
profit.
grand gestures,
That's our
but
unwavering
in the way
commitment
his
to this
hugs
community.
became less frequent, his eyes clouded with worry. The situation reached a boiling point when Maria became pregnant. Instead of the joy she had longed for,
I really think this
she
ethical
found
design
new
institute could
anxieties.
change everything.
Rebecca
Yes, the
feigned
impact would be
excitement in public,
tremendous.
Yeah.
but
We're
grew
truly
more
building
ruthless
something
in
special
private,
here.
insisting that Maria see only doctors of
Maria.
her choosing, scrutinizing
Maria, my
Maria's
wonderful
every move,
wife.
and spreading rumors that the child was an attempt to secure her place in the Wallace family. The
Alara's
rumors
first
grew
illegal land
outside
deal.
the walls of the mansion as well. Maria noticed women at the grocery store, glancing her way and whispering. Invitations to lunches dwindled. Even her former professors from college seemed awkward when they ran into her in town. Yet, Maria's isolation was complete when
Well
Rebecca
played.
organized a formal family celebration for the coming baby. A lavish event with decorations, expensive catering, and dozens of Rebecca's closest friends, but precious few of Maria's acquaintances. Throughout the afternoon, Maria was paraded and patronized, endlessly reminded of her good fortune at being welcomed into the Wallace legacy. Behind every glass raised in toast, Maria could feel the judgment. She was forever the outsider, both envied and despised. The most chilling blow came late one night when Maria overheard Rebecca on the phone. She was speaking in hushed tones, her words an icy promise. "I will not let anyone destroy what I have built. She will give up and leave, one way or another." The words resonated through Maria's mind, crystallizing the truth. This was not a misunderstanding, but a deliberate campaign to drive her out. Yet Maria was not as powerless as she appeared. Driven by maternal instinct and a sense of justice, she began to gather evidence. She quietly documented each slight, each strange occurrence, each whisper and rumor. She created a hidden notebook, carefully recording dates, names, and overheard conversations. Maria learned to smile in public, to let Rebecca believe she was winning the battle.
This new intel confirms the direct link between the
a new
shell
resolve began
corporations
to
and our
form.
primary suspects.
The fight was no longer for acceptance, but for survival and dignity. As the mansion's marble halls echoed with schemes and betrayals, Maria realized she would need to use every ounce of intelligence and resilience she possessed. She would fight, not with cruelty,
Do you remember that
but with
day?
truth. Where
course
Rebecca
I
wielded
do.
power and secrecy, Maria would respond with patient observation
Giving back
and
is
unshakable
truly the
will.
most
In
important
time,
thing we can do
the
for our
games being
community.
played under the glittering chandeliers and manicured lawns
This isn't just a
would set the
construction
stage
failure, Alara.
for a reckoning
This is
neither
the
of
human
them
cost
could
of
have
your greed.
anticipated. Through it all, the Wallace mansion remained a symbol, a fortress hiding secrets, where battles of status and legacy were fought not with
Remember,
weapons,
stick to the script.
but with words,
We are almost there.
whispers, and cunning. Maria had entered the house with a dream. Now she faced
Alara
the
Chen,
daunting challenge
you're not
of
going anywhere.
defending her right to belong. Each day, the stakes climbed higher within those storied walls as the sinister schemes continued. And Maria, no longer naive, prepared herself to become a formidable player in her own story. Days of loneliness and fear. When Maria first moved into the Wallace mansion, the grandeur of everything, from the chandeliers to the silent, gleaming corridors, fascinated her. But as weeks slipped into months, she discovered that beneath the polished surface lay a cold, echoing emptiness, a loneliness that pressed on her from every direction, day and night. In the early mornings, she would lie awake on smooth linen sheets in the cavernous bedroom she shared with David. Sunlight would spill onto the hardwood floors, streaking the shadows.
Love having all of you here.
But for Maria, the brightness seemed to
family.
illuminate how alone she was. There was always commotion in the house. Maids moving quietly, gardeners tending the grounds, the bustling energy of staff making the estate hum with order, but none of it touched her heart. Everyone, it seemed, answered to Rebecca. Conversations would hush when Maria entered, only to resume in whispers once she was gone. David left early most days, working long hours to prove himself in the family's business, and by the time he returned at night, he seemed more weary and distant. Some evenings, he would simply collapse onto the couch, scrolling through his phone or reading emails with a furrowed brow. Their conversations became brief and shallow, polite exchanges about doctor's appointments and home decor, instead of the dreams and confidences they once shared. Whenever Maria tried to voice her fears about Rebecca's machinations, David would brush them aside. "You're overthinking things,
Oh, that looks
Maria,"
so pretty.
he'd say gently. "My mother has her ways, but she wants what's best for us." Slowly, Maria began to feel like a ghost in her own marriage. Meals were no comfort. Rebecca presided over the long cherrywood dining table, making sure conversation revolved around topics Maria knew little about. Stock portfolios, philanthropic galas, the latest developments in local politics. Maria would try to join
Sarah.
in, only to be politely ignored, her comments dismissed with a tight smile or a quick change of subject. On days when Rebecca hosted gatherings, Maria's status as an outsider was magnified.
I love you, my
Guests
sweet
would
Lily.
size her up with curious, sometimes pitying, glances, murmuring just out of earshot. Maria felt
want her gone
as if
by
she
the
were
end of the day.
constantly on trial, an imposter under a relentless spotlight. Her phone became her lifeline to family back in Mexico. She called her mother and sisters when she could, her voice light with practiced cheerfulness, as she described Los Angeles sunsets and her new life. But she left out the aching loneliness, the subtle cruelties, the way her laughter felt forced in the echoing kitchens. She didn't want to worry them. She didn't want her mother to hear the tremble she could barely keep from her voice. Nights were the hardest. The mansion grew impossibly still, and fear crept in with the darkness. Maria found herself double-checking that all doors were locked, even though staff were there around the clock, and leaving a lamp on beside the bed. Each night, her mind replayed the day's slights and snubs, inventing conversations where she stood up for herself, imagining David seeing the truth, or Rebecca showing an ounce of kindness. But dawn always brought the same reality. Nothing had changed. Her pregnancy brought new layers of anxiety and isolation. The excitement she'd once imagined, the joy of shopping for baby clothes, decorating a nursery, celebrating each new milestone, was tainted by a constant state of vigilance. She caught Rebecca rearranging nursery
Lily's
items
health is
behind her
excellent,
back,
and Sarah has
overheard the
consistently
staff
provided
discussing
attentive and
doctor
loving
appointments that Rebecca had scheduled without telling her, and once found a list of preschools written in Rebecca's precise handwriting, none of which Maria had ever mentioned or approved. Outside the walls of the mansion, Maria's isolation became just as pronounced. She noticed that invitations to lunch from David's friends had dwindled to nothing. Even phone calls with her college classmates grew rare. She suspected Rebecca had had a word with them at one of her charity events, in grocery stores, or at the park. Women she vaguely knew from the community would give her cautious
Thank you for calling.
nods
I'll connect you now.
and forced smiles, then quickly avert their eyes. The sense of being watched was constant and suffocating. As weeks passed, Maria developed rituals to soothe her nerves. She would walk alone in the rose garden at dusk, the perfect symmetry and sweet scent giving her a moment's peace. Sometimes she would bake late at night, filling the giant kitchen with the aroma of dulce de leche or cinnamon
She's been
buns,
seeing someone else
scents
behind
from
his
her
back.
childhood that brought her a brief comfort. She kept a journal hidden in the back of her closet, writing down everything she couldn't say aloud. Her fears for her child, her worries about David, and every calculated move Rebecca made. The psychological pressure grew more intense. Maria began to distrust her own perception of reality. Sometimes, she found herself staring too long at the mirror in the hallway, silently demanding her reflection to answer questions she didn't dare ask aloud. Is it really this bad? Am I losing my mind? She worried about the baby, afraid that all this stress would somehow hurt her child. She spoke words of love and reassurance to her belly, as if trying to build a shield around the little life growing inside her. Her most crushing moments were the ones that revealed just how completely she had been isolated. On her birthday, a finely wrapped gift from Rebecca awaited her at the breakfast table, a first edition poetry anthology that she could never imagine reading in peace. But not a single call or text came from her few remaining friends. Not long after, Maria realized her neighbors seemed to know things about her past she had shared only in confidence with David or in-laws. Rumors about her family, innuendo about her motives, began to trail her everywhere. Shame and fear knotted in her chest, a sense that no matter how above reproach
You need to
she
handle
lived,
this new evidence
she could
carefully.
be
Do
painted
you
as an
understand me?
opportunist, a gold digger, an unwelcome outsider. Through all the isolation and anxiety, one thing kept Maria going: the fierce, maternal hope that her child would have better. She began to study the subtle dynamics of the house. Who spoke first in
This
meetings?
is the best way to move
Which
forward.
staff reacted to Rebecca's moods? Which
Are you
rooms
ready?
seemed to have ears? She discovered
Sarah!
quiet strengths, her grandmother's faith, her mother's grit inside herself, fueling her determination to endure just a little longer. At times, Maria wondered what would happen if she left, packed up her few belongings
I just
and
wanted you to know
disappeared,
that I set the record
started
straight
fresh
for
in a
you.
new city. But each time, she imagined the consequences. How Rebecca would win, how her child would lose a family history, and how she herself would forever regret giving up her dream. For every day that Maria survived in the Wallace mansion, she grew stronger. Her pain shaped her resolve.
Thank you.
She realized that her loneliness and fear, as devastating as they were, could also become the crucible that transformed her from a frightened outsider into someone who could define her own destiny. So she held on, clinging to small acts of rebellion and self-preservation, a favorite song sung quietly while folding baby clothes, secret notes kept in Spanish, boundaries set in conversations with Rebecca that, while ignored, strengthened Maria's sense of self. Each night, before she slept, she whispered a quiet promise to the baby beneath her heart. You will know love,
And they lived
you will
happily
know strength,
ever after,
and we will not be
forever and
broken.
ever.
And in that lonely promise, Maria began to find the roots of courage that would carry her through whatever came next. Earth-shattering. Secrets of the Wallace family. Maria's transformation from fearful outsider to quiet investigator happened almost imperceptibly.
So we'll file the
The
injunction
endless
first thing in the
days
morning,
and nights
then
of
move to freeze
isolation,
Sarah's assets.
suspicion, and surveillance finally reached a tipping point. Not into resignation, but into resilience. One crisp autumn morning, after yet another sleepless night, Maria woke
running out of time
with a
here.
new sense of determination. If Rebecca Wallace wanted to make her feel powerless, Maria would find her power elsewhere. And as she started looking more closely at her surroundings, the
Mrs.
people,
Miller, it's falling
the
apart.
patterns, the
It's all
slips
falling apart.
beneath the surface, she realized she had been missing something important all along. The Wallace family's perfect veneer was an illusion, and beneath it, secrets simmered. Maria's first clue came by accident. She was helping organize the library, an ornate, oak-paneled room she rarely entered, when a folder slipped from a high shelf, scattering papers across the Persian rug. Among the papers was a list of names and numbers, most of which meant nothing to her. But a few familiar company logos caught her eye.
I'm truly
And
sorry
as she
for what
pieced
happened.
together the documents, a thread of questionable financial transactions began to emerge. Why would a reputable real estate dynasty like the Wallaces have so many hidden offshore accounts and shell corporations?
He confessed.
Maria tucked the documents in her handbag, heart thumping, before Rebecca appeared to direct the staff for the upcoming charity dinner. That night, lying awake, Maria recalled the odd meetings she'd overheard Rebecca having with sharply dressed men who never seemed like normal business associates. Business dinners,
To the beautiful
always held in
chaos
private rooms,
that life so often
guests
brings.
who left through side doors. She began to suspect that the Wallace empire was not as untouchable as Rebecca liked everyone to believe. As days turned to weeks, Maria's curiosity grew. She had to be careful. The staff reported everything to Rebecca, and David, weighed down by his mother's influence and his own denial, was in no position to help.
We believe
Maria
in you.
started keeping a secret notebook, hidden inside the lining of an old
Thank
suitcase,
you.
where she meticulously recorded every strange occurrence. Sudden changes in the family's finances, hushed phone calls in the dead of night, bursts of tension between Rebecca and her usually sycophantic lawyer. It didn't take long before Maria noticed Rebecca's paranoia. The matriarch kept her office door locked, her calendars coded, and her personal assistants
He was talking
fiercely
about a
loyal.
second entrance.
But Rebecca's confidence bred carelessness. A few passwords jotted on a Post-it, a banker's business card left in a coat pocket. These tiny clues allowed Maria to probe deeper, using the mansion's rarely occupied home office to access public property records, court cases, and, using her resourcefulness, some investigative journalism sites. She learned
The
that
Millers team
several
made a
large
critical
land
procedural
deals
error.
attributed to the Wallace
window
name
for appeal
had
is
been
now
tied
open.
up in zoning irregularities. Shell companies
No,
buying and selling
no,
to
that's
each
not
other
what I meant about
at
Sarah. It was
suspiciously
all just a
inflated
misunderstanding.
prices. Charities founded by the family had, over the years, become conduits for discreetly moving large sums of money to unknown recipients. A few neighbors
Subject
had
departed
grumbled
residence
about
at
developments
0300
that had
hours.
forced longtime residents
Suspect
out,
identified as
and more
Sarah.
than one local politician had left a Wallace fundraiser both richer and more indebted. But the most disturbing secrets were personal. One evening, while helping David search for an old photo album, Maria discovered a letter hidden behind a loose brick in the study's fireplace. It was addressed to Rebecca, written in a trembling hand by someone named Emily, Rebecca's estranged younger sister. The letter spoke of shame, betrayal, and threats
Ladies
over a
and
long
gentlemen
ago
of the jury,
family scandal
the
that
evidence
Rebecca had
clearly
gone to
shows a pattern
extraordinary
of
lengths to
deception.
conceal. Maria sensed immediately that whatever happened had been so damaging, so consequential, that Rebecca would rather destroy her own family than let the truth escape. The coldness that Rebecca wore like armor suddenly appeared to Maria as something far more brittle and desperate. Driven by a new hunger for truth,
This
Maria
evidence
started
is
reaching
high
out,
risk, but
cautiously,
crucial.
under the guise
I
of
need your
reconnecting
validation
with
and
old
strategic
friends
support
from
on this.
college and volunteering at local nonprofits. She discovered whispers that the Wallace family had a long history of protecting their legacy at any cost. Workers dismissed from the family business under mysterious circumstances. Rumors that competitors had been ruined
Get
by
someone over here
tip-offs to
immediately.
tax authorities.
I have a flat tire.
And stories about people who had crossed Rebecca and found themselves cut off from the city's lucrative real estate contracts. The slow accumulation of knowledge
No,
gave
I
Maria
can't.
a strange sense of empowerment. She hacked nothing, stole nothing. She simply listened,
Thank you.
took notes, and let her presence go unnoticed. Occasionally, she would test her theories on Rebecca by mentioning a charity or a business rival in casual conversation, gauging the matriarch's reaction. Rebecca's tight-lipped expressions and sudden changes in topic told Maria she was circling closer to a nerve. Perhaps most chilling of all, Maria began to suspect that Rebecca's campaign against her was fueled not only by hatred or prejudice, but by the terror that Maria might uncover the Wallace family's tangled truths. Maria's foreignness, her lack of connections, made her seem harmless until she showed signs of independence. The more Maria pressed, the more Rebecca clamped down, intercepting her mail, rearranging her schedule, and even reprimanding staff for allowing Maria too much freedom. There is a cruel irony in realizing that the mansion Maria had once seen as a palace was, in fact, Rebecca's fortress.
Legal consequence
A place
for
where
Mr.
secrets
Miller.
could be locked away, threats could be neutralized, and inconvenient truths could be hidden behind marble walls and manicured gardens. Gradually, Maria pieced together a comprehensive dossier, copies of questionable financial documents, notes on Rebecca's blackmail schemes, summaries of damning conversations overheard through cracked doors. When she realized the magnitude of her findings, she was shaken. These were not
you don't
petty
understand.
family
The shipment is
scandals.
on its way.
These were matters that could bring down the Wallace
Of
fortune,
course, I told you I'd call him.
scandalize half of Los Angeles high society, and, at the very least, destroy any moral authority Rebecca had to torment Maria. The decision to act did not come easily. Each night, as Maria weighed the risks, her marriage, her safety, her unborn child's future, against the grim certainty that remaining silent would mean perpetual subjugation, she felt a mix of dread and resolve. She practiced what she would say, how she would respond to accusations of betrayal, how she would protect her child if Rebecca retaliated. But Maria also felt something new, coursing through her veins alongside the fear, a righteous anger, a sense
This
of
is so
justice.
good, Lily.
She understood,
I
at
really
last,
like this.
that
Thank
what
you.
separated her from her mother-in-law was not just class, culture, or language, but a willingness to use the truth, not power for its own sake. The Wallace family's secrets did not belong to Rebecca alone. They were woven into the lives of every person injured by their ambition, every neighbor displaced, every competitor destroyed. Maria's story was only one in a long thread of casualties, and uncovering the truth became, for her, an act of survival, a battle for dignity in a
Do you
house
deny the
built on
allegations?
lies. And so
Is that what
Maria,
you're telling us here?
who had
That's
come
what I'm
to
saying.
America searching for hope, found herself clutching the keys to a different kind of freedom and preparing to use them, come what may. The rise of the Latina daughter-in-law, the day Maria decided to take her destiny into her own hands, was not marked by lightning or grand declarations. It was an ordinary morning. The sky was soft with the dim glow of dawn, and the air in the Wallace mansion hummed with its usual quiet choreography. Maids setting the table, gardeners tending roses, Rebecca's distant voice dictating to her assistant. But Maria's heartbeat was different. The accumulated months of pain, rejection, and fear had hardened into something sharp and resolute. Where once she'd shrunk from the palatial walls, she now let her feet echo with confidence on the marble floors. She was no longer just enduring. She was preparing to fight back. Maria began the process with care and deliberation. Every action was measured. Each morning, after David left for work, she slipped away from the main rooms, blending among the staff as she visited forgotten hallways and storage areas. Here, she carefully hid copies of the incriminating documents she'd uncovered, financial records, correspondence, and the mysterious letter from Rebecca's estranged sister. Inside hollowed books or beneath loose floorboards, she understood that information was life insurance, and she was determined to protect both herself and her unborn child. Yet, gathering evidence was only the beginning. Maria knew that the web of Rebecca's influence reached beyond the nation, to society's highest circles, to the powerful and the corrupt, to those who would close ranks to protect their own. She would need allies, and she would need to choose them wisely. Drawing on her own background, Maria began reaching out quietly to other immigrants and women she'd met through church and community work, those who'd hinted at their own experiences with exclusion or subtle intimidation, from the city's elite. Conversations that started with recipes or baby advice gradually deepened as Maria shared small, guarded pieces of her story and listened in turn. It was a sisterhood born of shared wounds and resilience. Behind her calm exterior, Maria was learning the art of strategy. She attended every social event organized by Rebecca, no matter how patronizing, and memorized the body language and patterns of the guests. She learned which trustees at the Wallace Foundation were loyal, which philanthropists rolled their eyes at Rebecca's pronouncements, and which reporters from the local press were quietly hungry for scandal, especially if it involved the city's old money class. Maria's network widened, not just for self-protection, but with the understanding that any strong house was only as secure as the secrets it contained. When the time was right, Maria launched her counteroffensive, not with drama, but with precision. She began sending carefully worded anonymous letters to select board members of the Wallace Foundation and to business partners, whom she knew to be ethical, attaching proof of irregular transactions and subtle hints that their own reputations could suffer if they remained complicit. At the same time,
sure they'll agree to it?
She prepared a package for an investigative journalist who had a reputation for holding the powerful to account.
I couldn't.
It was dangerous. Some nights Maria lay awake, nerves jangling, convinced that a careless move could bring everything crashing down. But with each risk, she grew stronger. She became adept at anticipating Rebecca's moves, pairing a backhanded compliment at the breakfast table with gentle but firm clarity, or redirecting conversations at social events with the skill of a seasoned diplomat. Maria's voice, once so quiet and
We can make this
deferential,
work.
became a steady force, never
Just
shrill,
be careful.
but never backing down. The first ripples of her actions became visible within weeks. Board members began asking new questions at meetings. Business partners withdrew from deals that once seemed unshakable. Rebecca's public composure grew brittle,
I don't
and
remember.
rumors of
Safe
possible
upstairs.
mismanagement started to ripple through the philanthropic community. The Wallace name, long synonymous with unapproachable power, began to be spoken of with caution. Inside the mansion, power dynamics shifted subtly but unmistakably. Staff who had once ignored Maria began to treat her with extra care, some leaving small tokens of solidarity, an encouraging note, a favorite dessert,
Where did
a
that come
discreet
from?
word of warning.
He
David,
can't know I called.
long torn between his mother and his
You
wife,
have to tell him to back off.
finally noticed the deep currents moving beneath the surface. He found himself drawn into conversations he'd previously avoided. Why are so many people talking about the family in town? He asked Maria one evening, his confusion tinged with a new humility. Maria answered him with truth. Sitting together in the quiet nursery, she explained what she had discovered, the steps she had taken, and the depth of Rebecca's resolve to erase her from the family. David's initial anger, directed at anyone who would threaten his family's name, slowly dissolved into silence as Maria showed him proof. Too much had been hidden from him for him to process quickly. But seeing Maria's strength in the face of such adversity shook him to his core. Meanwhile, a front-page article appeared in the Sunday edition of the city's most respected newspaper. Are old money families above the law? Allegations rock the Wallace Foundation. Maria read the story at the breakfast table, her hands trembling just enough to betray the magnitude of the moment. Rebecca seethed, but could do nothing in front of the watching staff and David's questioning gaze. For the first time, Maria felt the tide beginning to turn. Rebecca reacted with fury.
You took the
Private
money, didn't you,
threats,
John?
Withering silence, desperate phone calls to lawyers and business allies. But the armor she had always used to instill fear was now visibly cracked.
This bank record places you at the
Invitations to
scene.
high-profile galas evaporated. The Wallace name was quietly pulled from foundation boards in fundraising dinners. Maria's measured campaign had achieved what open confrontation could never have done. It changed the story people told about the Wallaces, and by extension, about Maria herself.
Good morning, everyone.
But this victory was not merely about vindication.
I stand before you today.
It was about transformation. Maria began to host gatherings at the mansion herself, opening doors to people who had once been turned away.
Oh.
Neighbors from immigrant communities, women who had married into elite families and shared her struggles, local artists and activists. These evenings, filled with laughter and stories in many languages, slowly changed the atmosphere of the house. Where once there had only been tension and suspicion, there was now a blossoming
We're just trying to
hope,
understand what
a
happened.
sense of genuine community and belonging.
I've already told you
There were
everything I
still
know.
challenges. David and Maria's path toward rebuilding trust was slow, sometimes painful. Not everyone in the Wallace family or the city's elite was willing to accept change. Staff remained cautious, haunted by the memory of Rebecca's reign. But Maria refused to let fear reclaim the ground she'd fought so hard to gain. As her child grew, so did Maria's sense of purpose. She made a quiet vow that her son or daughter would never feel like an outsider in their own home or in their own country. The mansion that had once felt like a gilded prison became, for the first time, a place of redemption and beginnings. Maria's rise was not a fairy tale victory or a public dethroning of her antagonist. It was the slow, deliberate reclaiming of one's power after a long season in darkness. It was about lighting small, stubborn lamps of hope and dignity in hallways where shadows had ruled. In overcoming every plot and humiliation, Maria became more than just a survivor. She became a founder of her family's new future, rewriting the definition of what it truly meant to achieve the American dream. The journey to justice and a new family justice, Maria realized, is not always a public thunderclap or a gauntlet thrown in a crowded courtroom. Sometimes it is quieter, a steady, determined march through the darkness, choosing, again and again, not to give up. After months of gathering evidence, quietly building alliances, and taking calculated risks, Maria stood on the cusp of the most important battle she had ever faced. Not just for her own dignity, but for her child's future.
Are you sure you have nothing
and
to
the
say?
soul of the family she had once longed to call her own. The momentum had shifted.
The suspect
after
ran
the
off
front
in that
page
direction.
expose. For years, the Wallace name had been shielded by the armor of wealth, reputation, and seemingly untouchable power networks. Maria's carefully orchestrated leak had cracked that facade. Lawyers called, board members distanced themselves. Rebecca, whose every word had once sent tremors through the mansion, was suddenly besieged by questions she could not answer with charm or intimidation. But the consequences were far from over. In the days that followed, the mansion was awash with tension. Staff tiptoed through the halls. Neighbors whispered at the gates. Maria braced herself for the storm she had unleashed. What she had not fully anticipated, however, was the internal war brewing within the Wallace family. David was thrown into a maelstrom of conflicting loyalties.
I'm so sorry.
For the first time in his life, he saw his mother not only as a guardian, but as a flawed, even dangerous, architect of the family's unhappiness. At night, he turned to Maria, not with the dismissive disbelief of old, but with the vulnerable honesty of a man forced to reckon with uncomfortable truths. "I don't know who I am outside of all this," he confessed during one midnight conversation. "For so long, I thought protecting the family meant protecting the lie." Maria listened, neither accusing nor pitying him. She had learned that true justice required not only the exposure of wrong, but the creation of space for healing and reconstruction. The temptation to dwell on vengeance was real, but Maria reminded herself that her fight was not simply against Rebecca or her machinations.
Oh, it was nothing.
It was against a culture
Just
of
glad
silence,
to have it all.
against
Just
a
glad
history
to have it all wrapped up.
that punished those who dared to be different. Rebecca, meanwhile, was forced to confront the consequences of her actions. For decades, she had believed that order and legacy were worth any sacrifice. That conviction now lay in splinters. Friends who had once hung on her every word now avoided her gaze. Power brokers who benefited from her patronage coldly kept their distance. Even the few family members who had supported her began whispering softly
She's been
of
asking
change.
about you.
Ironically,
Best to lay low
it was
for a while.
this vacuum
And the package?
that allowed Maria to step forward. A new matriarch
Oh,
forged
hello
in
there.
adversity and resilience, rather than in tradition or privilege. Maria knew she had to be deliberate about the kind
Found
of
you.
family she wanted for herself and her child. It began with small steps, repairing her relationship with the staff by acknowledging their humanity, offering thanks and requesting their stories, creating space for honest conversations with David, even when the revelations hurt.
Come on.
Reaching out to distant relatives who had once been part of the Wallace orbit, but had left, disillusioned by the family's cold perfectionism. Public justice took its course as well. The authorities opened investigations into suspicious real estate transactions and misuse of philanthropic funds. Nonprofit partners restructured their boards. The community saw the once untouchable Wallace Foundation now obligated to disclose annual finances and, ultimately, to donate substantial sums to reparative projects, affordable
was arguing
housing,
with someone.
scholarships, and outreach programs that directly benefited once shunned neighborhoods. Maria attended some of these events, speaking softly but powerfully about the lessons she had learned. The necessity of truth, the danger of unchecked power,
There's something under
and
here.
the strength that comes from solidarity. But the deeper justice, Maria understood,
And the next
would
thing
unfold
you know,
privately.
she just looks at her sister
She
and
and
says,
David entered a
"I'm
new
done."
season defined by
and then
honesty,
she walked away.
sometimes raw, sometimes awkward,
know you were there,
but
Olivia.
always real. There were nights when anger returned,
I already told you everything.
memories of
me again.
isolation or humiliation flashing between them. Maria grieved her lost innocence, the family warmth she had once hoped for, and even the marriage as it was before the truth had come to light. Yet, in embracing these losses, both she and David
I am
found
here
the roots
today
of
to
renewal.
ensure that our shared
Maria
history
also
is
reconnected
not
with her own
forgotten.
family, to her mother and sisters in Mexico. She told the full story at last, not the sanitized version she'd offered before. Tears were shed, but also laughter and pride. They reminded her of her
This is
worth
not good.
beyond any American dream. She was loved, and that alone was unbreakable. Her child, when born, would know not only the Wallace legacy, but also the unshakable heritage of perseverance and love, handed down through generations of women who had crossed deserts of their own. In the years that followed, Maria became a quiet force in the community. She hosted gatherings that welcomed people from all walks of life: immigrants, artists, activists, and business leaders searching for redemption. The mansion, once a fortress of exclusion, transformed
We
into a
believe the
place of
suspect
friendship
has been moving
and
between these
possibility.
key locations in
Maria
Warrenville.
built a support network for women facing abuse or prejudice in elite families, helping them find their voice and chart their paths out of silence. Her relationship with Rebecca changed too, not into friendship or forgiveness, at least not right away, but into a wary peace. They shared moments of civility, polite exchanges at family dinners, shared concern for the baby, even sometimes a brief smile of recognition that both had survived a long war. Rebecca, stripped of her illusions of invincibility, began to age visibly. Maria saw in her both a tragic figure shaped by fear and a cautionary lesson. What Rebecca thought was strength had, in the end, been nothing but brittle armor. Maria's hardest but most crucial task was teaching her child to live without the shadow of bitterness. In everyday
Did you hear about
moments,
John's deal?
packing lunches,
More chat rooms.
reading stories,
Not now,
decorating the
Olivia.
nursery, she chose grace over grievance. She taught her child
Thank you
to be
all for
proud
being
of their
here.
heritage,
It's truly an honor.
to challenge injustice, and to offer kindness, but stand firm against cruelty. With each passing day, Maria and David's new family, chosen
The little bear
and earned,
cub snuggled
became
into his mother's
inseparable
fur,
from the broader
feeling
community
safe
around
and
them.
loved.
Justice,
Oh,
Maria learned, is never finished. It is a practice, a daily commitment to transparency, empathy, and the pursuit of a better future. Her journey was not about erasing the pain of the past, but about transforming it, building a new legacy on the lessons learned in hardship. So, the mansion shone again, not with opulence alone, but with the quiet strength of hope restored. Maria's laughter, once timid and uncertain, filled the halls. Children
This is a
played in
delicate
gardens
situation.
once reserved
The
only
Walker
for the
family, you
privileged few.
see,
Neighbors
their
from
roots
all
run
backgrounds
deep in this town,
gathered at her
deeper
table,
than most would
sharing
imagine.
meals and stories
Is that your shirt, John?
that forged a new definition of family. In the sacred work of reclaiming justice and forging her family's new beginning, Maria Hernandez not only wrote her American dream, she authored a dream big enough for everyone who would follow after her.